When it comes down to video games, a lot of people don't really understand the mechanisms that are put behind them to use for education and training. So what we're going to talk about today is how video games are used to help motivate in learning and education for children. According to the Harvard Graduate School of Education and Louisa Rosenheck, learning games actually help motivate learning because as humans, we like to learn and we like to get better at what we do. In addition to that, games at schools that are deemed educational actually focus somewhat on the material and certain skills that children need, but they don't exactly encourage learning or spark any motivation. But to choose certain learning games, parents and educators must navigate through different content to help engage children in authentic learning. This also helps them have a choice in how they play and their goals in the game. It also helps ignite curiosity, meaning that children will ask more questions and they'll try to figure out how a certain interface works. It allows for what's called hard fun. It induces challenges into the children's minds to help them reach their goals. It's also encouraging and satisfying once you complete a certain challenge. Many parents really don't understand how fun and learning really go hand in hand because they like to limit their children to a certain amount of screen time. But they can also find ways to support their kids in this learning progress to make these connections between their virtual worlds and the real world. They can provide this support by engaging their children in conversations and talking to them about what's going on with their computers and how they play their games. They also help emphasize any type of skill that they learned. So if it's like a social skill, let's say on Minecraft, right? So you got a kid that's playing the game and they're talking to someone and they really kind of, let's say, hit it off with each other, then they're able to have that type of same social skill when it comes down to talking to people in the real world. It also helps them understand how games can provide children with that type of chance to build those connections with other people. Also, parents do need to learn how to release some control, meaning they should be able to learn how to let their children be children in addition to kind of monitoring them but not overpowering them. Now let's talk about some pros and cons of game-based learning. But before we get into that, let's not really confuse that with gamification. Game-based learning, with that, it really just allows the games to meet the criteria and the outcomes of the material. It actually induces the learning from playing the games, and it achieves that education-oriented level. In addition to that, as I mentioned, it also enhances a child's critical thinking and problem-solving skills to learn. And gamification, being what it is, it replaces the lessons with games, basically. So instead of using like the lesson-based games, they're using the games instead. They also apply the game mechanisms and mechanics to non-game environments for motivation. So instead of, let's say, having like an education-oriented bingo game to teach your kids what different instruments are, right? But instead, you're just playing a regular bingo game. It doesn't really do anything. It just motivates them, but it's not teaching them anything about an instrument or what it looks like or how it sounds, like when I was a kid. because my music teacher, he had his stereo and he would play an instrument and we would have to guess what it is and put it on our bingo card with the bingo chip. But if we were wrong, we'd have to take it off. And also in gamification, instead of a score like a 98 or an 85, you're rewarded with a badge or an achievement or some type of award rather than an actual traditional score. They also can replace that with what's called experience points or XP points, and it allows more leniency for options. Now, with that being said, some of the goods or the pros of game-based learning, according to Bedrock Learning, as I said, it increases the motivation and encouragement. It also allows for children to collaborate with each other so they can get online and play with each other, play with their classmates, or play with someone else on those education-based games. And it also allows for personalized learning and inclusiveness. Some of the cons of game-based learning is that, like I said, it's not always beneficial to the material. Sometimes, like I said, it ends up being just gamification where they replace that material with the games. And it can be expensive because you have to buy computers, you have to buy headphones, you have to buy speakers, you have to buy the headsets, then you have to buy a mouse, or you have to buy batteries. If it's a laptop, you have to buy a charger and things like that. You got to pay for the Wi-Fi and everything else, and that can become very, very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars if you really don't pay attention. Also, those games that these children play can become a distraction. So they're not really more focused on the material, but they're focused on the games. They're focused on their scores. They're focused on how well they're doing in the game rather than how well they're doing in class. And you also have to be careful with that extended screen time. If kids are not limited, even in the schools, with that screen time, it could be bad for their eyes. It could be bad for their brain. Too much screen time could actually lead to either blindness or a kid having to need a certain type of glasses. Like me, I spent so much time on a laptop and watching TV that I now have astigmatism. So we have to really be careful with how much screen time we're letting the children use nowadays. So that's really it. That's all I have for game-based learning. See you next time.